Meeting for Monday, February 13, 2023 to order. We will move into public access to meeting, which is we are continuing to allow access to meeting both in person as well as streaming online. We'll move into the roll call and verification of quorum. Carlin, if you could do so.
Mr. Ebel.
Here.
Ms. Bushman.
Here.
Mr. Pope.
Here.
Ms. Portson.
Here.
Ms. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Robbie.
Here.
Ms. Rano.
Here.
Ms. Erler.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
And we will note that Dennis Robbie is attending by phone, which is allowed by our policy, so he will be by phone with us through the meeting. So we will move into our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are in the public comment section of the agenda. Carlene, did anyone send email public comment for tonight?
We did not receive any public comment via email.
Okay. No one has signed up ahead of time. Is there anybody present this evening who would like to provide comment to the board on agenda items? Seeing none, we will move into our presentations. I'll note two of our presenters are under the weather, so we are excusing our student representative, Adeline Johnson, and wishing her the best recovery. Communication report, Sarah also is under the weather, and Corey will be providing her report to us.
So Sarah left me with a couple bullet points to share with you as far as communications go. She said that media stories were up month over month with an 80% generated through press releases or inquiries from social media posts. Social media rebounded nicely after a dip in December with a jump in engagement of over 100% on Facebook and over 180% on Instagram, led by comments and shares on our our Throwback Thursday posts. Internal newsletters and the district source and key communicator also had strong open and click-through rates for the month. And she wanted me to share that we are currently collecting responses on staff and family communication check-in surveys. We're looking for patterns and strengths and opportunities for growth. So those surveys will remain open through the week, and she's going to send out one more reminder to people on Wednesday. So if you have not filled out that communication survey, we're encouraging families and community to do that. We are also going to be deploying the school perception surveys that we normally do each spring. We're going to do those in April, so they'll be going out soon, and then Sarah will bring a report back to the board like she normally does after those are gathered. That's all she has. I think we're good.
Does anybody have any questions from the report Sarah provided? All right, we will move into the superintendent's report.
So a few things here. Our AP Computer Science class just received an award. They were recognized by the College Board for the number of girls in our AP Computer Science class. So that was a pretty cool acknowledgement from the College Board. That program is just a phenomenal program and experience for kids. So thanks to SPASH and staff for encouraging girls to take those classes. Athletic Hall of Fame is April 15th. If you've not registered and if you're interested in attending, please make sure you do that by March 15th. January enrollment. So our numbers went up for our second Friday count in January, which is a good thing. As was indicated at the business services meeting, there's 3 different counts that are taken: an actual seat count, and then a membership, which includes students that reside in our district but may go to school outside of the district somewhere else, and then an FTE for membership. And I'm happy to say that we're up 35 students actual in seats this January. So that's a really good thing. Normally we see a dip in January numbers, so we're thankful that those numbers have increased. The evaluation report, the survey that the board took, we are going to be bringing a WASB representative in at the March meeting to share those results, and then talk a little bit about the comparative data from us to other districts. 4K registration begins on March 20th. A reminder that for the board, we've got 2 businesses set up for tours. We're going to go to Auto Select on the 24th of February, and March 10th, we're going to go visit Point Precision.
You said March 20th. Is it February 20th or March?
February
It's
20th.
February
Okay.
24th and March 10th. Thank you, Chris,
Okay.
for that clarification. Wanted to share that the board, we had 12 members of cabinet and board head to Milwaukee for the State Education Convention. It was a great convention. We had Dr. Owens presented and Sarah O'Donnell presented. I attended a lot of sessions on, board and superintendent relations, community relations, some referendum sessions, and some, budget kind of sessions. So I thought it was great. The music always is a treat to listen to. Some really talented students that presented to a lot of people at conventions. So if there's any board members that attended that would like to share, some things that they saw or learned, I'm happy to open it up. G?
I was
I'll
gonna,
start.
you could go
Is that
first,
all
yeah,
right?
sure,
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I attended a session on advocacy, legislative advocacy, first by the Rossmuller and Kulo, okay, the lobbyists for WASB. And then I attended another one on advocacy by business directors of several different districts. So I got to see 2 different views of that. And then I was in the exhibition hall. I ran into a guy who wants to sue the state of Wisconsin for the way they fund education. Yeah, he was really fired up. Yeah, I signed up. No. But no, he was really fired up, and he had the superintendent from Adams Friendship was there, standing right there with him. So that was interesting. Okay, I'm done.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I spent the first kind of pre-session day attending everything about kind of board budget, district budget, learning all the intricacies of the budget. I attended a lot of board relation sessions, and so I felt like there were some best practices that I learned that we could take away and leverage here. And I think one of the most rewarding parts was just connecting and networking and ideating with everyone from, school board members to other just, superintendents in the district, et cetera. So I felt like it was time well spent.
Good. Anyone else?
So, I attended a lot of the different sessions. Over the years, you kind of learn that you may attend a session and after 10 minutes you go, I'm going to try another session. But the 3 sessions I really enjoyed, one was growing a school-based mental health framework. The other, elevating achievement for all through a focus on excellence and equity, which I really, really enjoyed. The last one was Title IX and transgender students, and there was no sitting room, and people were out in the hall, and I walked up, and Caleb was there. We had a great discussion about that. So I think the discussions that are brought forward are really, they're almost like a little bit of professional development for board members, because there are a lot of things that we deal with, and when you hear what other districts, how they're handling these things, it's great. So really appreciated I thought a great convention.
Anybody else?
Sure. The ones that I liked the most, I went to one on bullying. And I thought it was going to be something it wasn't. But we still, they talked a lot about the DPI is putting out a kit for bullying. But we really are doing most of those things already. But it was still an interesting one. And the one I really wanted to go to was on school start times. I've read a lot of research about starting the high school later, and it was very interesting to see his research. the guy had done his doctorate on it and defended his thesis on that. And it was really interesting, but a lot of obstacles in the way. So, but it was my first time. I thought it was fun.
Good.
So I went, the one, I guess, that I really appreciated learning about was, it was Superior presenting on restorative justice and the efforts they have taken to move that into their district. And it was interesting for the specific of what they are working to accomplish, but also just the overall changing of culture. You know, changing from one way of thinking and doing things into another. The other thing is that, well, the keynotes are always incredible, but also just the reality of the hard job the WASB has. Because again, fortunately for us as school districts, so much comes down to local control. But the reality is that we have a ton of districts in this state who all are facing very different and unique challenges. And I think that was, G can speak to this more than any of us, that was most evident in the fact that I think this was the first time in history that the delegates weren't able to get through all of their resolutions because they couldn't come to agreement on them. Because there are so many diverse, unique needs, most of which, as G notes, are, financial in lots of ways, but also in all sorts of ways as well. So, and Jen, as you noted, the ability to be down there and to hear from people all around the state and recognize all the pressures that everyone's facing, and then also to be really appreciative of what we have here in Stevens Point. So, but it's always a great learning experience, and it's also just nice to be able to work and learn along with administration in a way that we don't do probably as often as we should, with our day-to-day
Right.
board meetings and the work of the district, so.
So thanks to the board members that attended. I appreciate you going.
Dennis too, maybe.
Oh, Dennis, do you want to say something about convention?
I will. I was
Yep.
concerned with what you said and what Jen said regarding the opportunity to network with not only our administration and board members, but the board members and administration of the district. I thought that's very, very beneficial, so I would concur with that.
Great. Thank you, Dennis.
Thanks.
And the last thing on my list, I just wanted to thank Mike Wade for his 6 years of service as a board member. Mike resigned his position as of last Friday. He's accepted a new job out of state. So we're really going to miss him. He's been a great board member and just a committed individual. He chaired our Business Services Committee, which we'll talk a little bit more about later in the agenda. We'll pick an interim chair for that, and then we'll talk about a recommended process for filling or appointing Mike's position. So thanks to Mike, and we wish him the best.
Any questions of Corey with respect to her report? Right, we are moving into the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of our meeting of January 9th, 2023, the approval of the schedule of monthly bills, and employment recommendations. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jen, second by Judy. Any discussion or questions on that motion?
Since Beth is on the screen there, just wanted to ask, how are we sitting for open positions? Just an update on that.
Sure. Currently, we have 2 music teacher openings anticipating for next year, 1 math teacher, and we're currently looking to hire a speech and language pathologist and a school nurse. So that's it for certified staff.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments with respect to consent? Hearing none, I will have Carlin call the roll due to the monthly bills.
Ms. Bushman?
Yes.
Mr. Robbie?
Yes.
Ms. Erler?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Ebel?
Yes.
Mr. Pope?
Yes.
Ms. Portson?
Yes.
Ms. Reno?
Yes.
And motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move into business services. Mike was here to chair, but is not here this evening with us, so I'm going to go ahead and work through the one item that we had coming forward to us that we brought forward. And it is an information item, but it's something that I think we all need to hear about as a board together, as well as the community as a whole. So I'm going to call Tom up to talk about the budget evaluation process.
Good evening. We're going to just breeze through this a little bit. We made a fuller, more detailed presentation at the committee meeting, but we wanted to cover that with you this evening. So as we move to the next slide, we're looking at the budget evaluation process as the district was facing a budget shortfall, and the board directed administration to establish a budget evaluation model to address this deficit. So we did. And on the next slide, you'll see that in phase one of this model, it includes establishing a more structured review process, such as identifying and gathering and analyzing data from a variety of sources. It's a major effort that was involved in systemic review of staffing, programs, course offerings, enrollments, graduations, just a number of items. There's a plethora of things that make up a school district and affect costs, et cetera. Also, a thing that affects us considerably is the biennial budget, which I had a meeting with legislators last Friday. They were waiting for the governor's budget so they could kick things off and then begin to look at that whole process and start things off with the Joint Finance Committee. And then, of course, we're communicating the phase results. This is still a phase in progress, but tonight's the third communication effort that we've had with you in the process, and there is more to come. So in this process, you'll see in phase two, we'll be moving into this phase soon when we establish a process and timeline to develop criteria for evaluation matrix to analyze the input that includes stakeholder feedback, such things as programs and staffing. So we'll have to create various matrices to try to objectively as possible evaluate these criteria because that can be a very dicey area to deal with. And then we'll identify these items for priority funding or reduction in this phase. Then the process takes us to the next phase, phase three, in which we identify recommendations to address this deficit and communicate the results with stakeholders to gather additional input before making final recommendations. After which we will then present the recommendations for approval, and once approved, we wind up in this process moving to the next phase. The final phase, phase four, in which we implement the approved strategies that we've come up with and follow established protocols to control future budget development, after which we simply, not so necessarily simply, rinse and repeat as needed, because we have to continually look at what's going on and evaluate as situations changes. We have many divergent outside forces affecting how we do things, why we do things, et cetera. There are many things out of our control, some things in our control, and we try to deal with that as best we can. So that's an overview of the process.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. Question?
I have a couple questions.
Could I ask
too.
a question? Tom?
Tom?
Did you have,
Apparently wasn't fast enough.
Yeah, I was like,
did you have a timeline, like a specific timeline in mind? Because you said you would do this phase two soon. But are we looking at, can we implement this the next year?
We are in the process of identifying some things that will take effect with the upcoming budget year. We're still tuning that a little bit, and of course, a big factor in that is going to be the biennial budget, which I'm told they're looking at probably being done in June, which is the normal timeline for the biennial budget to be done. If it's done in June, then that'll give us some good timing to be able to make adjustments for the October final budget. So that, we're looking obviously at multi-year, this year and 23, 24 budget, and probably some aspects going in to the following year. That's to be developed yet. I don't want to get ahead of myself because there are things that we haven't even discussed that I don't know the answers to. But it's going to have to be a process that is strategic and not tactical. We can't just cut one or two things and that's the end of it. It has to be a strategic approach. We have to be able to make cuts that are systemic, that will allow us to continue to fund things on an ongoing basis. As I said, some things we don't control. A lot of this is due to the shortfall of the last biennial budget where we didn't get any money at all from the state. So that kind of put us in a little bit of a hurt, and we tried to offset as much as we could with ESSER funds, et cetera. But, we deal with the cards that are handed to us, so.
Gee, in our next present, we'll try to get a little bit more specific at what things will be implemented for next year.
Besides the 2%
Yes.
overall cut
yes.
right now?
We'll have other things that we'll bring forward. Yes, Dennis?
Yeah, just a request that on a monthly basis, that we get updates in terms of how this implementation, this overview is going, and also any kind of reductions that we're enacting in the meantime as we're going through this, so that the public and the board would be aware of those things.
Absolutely, Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
thanks, Tom, too. Appreciate it.
so I just a couple questions. So regarding like phase 1 through 5, is this going to be cyclical? Or are we going to wait till we have the full plan in place before we implement some of these strategies? Because, okay. Okay. And then, sorry, one last question. Oh, no, that was it. That was it. The timeline. You had asked it. Sorry. That's it. Oh, no, sorry. It was a long day. It was a long day. One
You've
last
been
question.
watching Columbo reruns.
My mom used to like that show. You said we face a budget deficit of approximately 4 million. At what point will we potentially hit that deficit? Is it the end of this calendar year or school year?
That's the budgeted projection.
Okay.
The performance is another issue, what actually happens, because we've been following this with our report in terms of the performance, and frankly, I don't think we're going to hit the 4 million shortfall.
Okay.
I'm not going to throw a number out there because
It'll change.
then you can say, how come you didn't hit that number, But I'm pretty confident it won't be that severe. Likewise, I'm pretty confident it's not going to be a break even either. I do believe we'll be in deficit this year.
Okay. Thank you.
So, and I guess I want to know, I mean, last year we were projecting about a $2 million structural deficit. At the end of the year, we were up by about $130-some thousand. But we had received
One time, fine.
0.75 from the governor one-time funding. Absent that one-time funding, we would have seen a relatively significant deficit. And then we provided CPI to staff at the tune of 4.7 this year, which was CPI in light of the reality of the importance of retaining and supporting our staff, as well as the reality of the marketplace out there for employees, as people across our community are seeing. Tom notes that the legislature is going to provide us with information hopefully in June, hopefully.
Expect a budget to be concluded.
A budget to be, right. But our budget starts in July, and we sign contracts hopefully with the majority of our contracted staff prior to that date. And we are looking at, again, an additional CPI reality going into next year. And so it is essential for not only our district, but districts across the state, that the state of Wisconsin takes seriously the importance of providing funding for our schools to support our students and our staff. So the 4 million is this budget, and we'll have a good sense come that June, July, August, hopefully, and once we've figured out kind of where we're at, what we'll be looking at moving into next year. But we, as Tom has noted a few times, due to the lack of ongoing funding from the states these last couple of years, I think all of us around the state have kind of experienced kind of a budget deficit and a budget hole. It is not unique to Stevens Point.
Correct.
So I appreciate all the efforts staff are doing, at board direction to really take a deep dive into the budget overall and do some fine combing about what savings are available for us to take.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Any other comments or questions with respect to that budget eval? All right, we'll move into Ed Services, and I will turn that over to Chair G. Pope.
Okay, we have three things, and they're all action items tonight. We're going to start off with B, the PODS school contract. That's up for renewal, and Jeff is going to talk about that. Jeff?
Thank
Okay.
you, G.
There you go.
Yep, and it is, like G said, we've got our pod school contract up for renewal. As you guys have seen, if you look at the memo, the last contract was signed by the board in March of 2018. Under direction from Corey, I took that old contract and revamped it, looked at some updated language the DPI required, adjusted that contract, had an opportunity to have both Corey, Tom Owens, myself, Dan Lathrop, and the governance board at PODS take a look at that contract. If you guys open it and look at it, you'll see there's quite a few items outlined in red. And what I did there was just made it really easy. I wanted the board to be able to see any of the changes that we were identifying that need to be made. The current contract will expire on June 30th of this year. So the motion put forward to the board is to approve this contract effective July 1st of 2023. That contract would run through June 30th of 2028. Are there any questions?
So if board members don't have any questions, I would be looking for a motion to approve the PODS contract for a period of 5 years, effective July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2028, pending approval from the PODS governance crew.
So moved.
Motion by Judy, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. Any discussion or questions on that motion? Chris?
Meg, I did have a question. Jeff, what would happen if in a year or two, somewhere between now and the 5 years, that enrollment dropped, like, big time?
So they do have, that's a great question, Chris. They do have within their contract that we sign there is a clause that they do have to maintain an enrollment to support their successful operation as a charter school. So if their enrollment decreased to a point where PODS was no longer able to effectively operate, we would have grounds to terminate the contract. And that's
Okay.
been in the contract in the last 2 revision cycles.
I thought it was, I I didn't find it, but I was sure it was in there somewhere. I might have missed it. So thank you, Jeff.
Good question, though, Chris.
Thank you.
Jeff, just another clarification question on that, please. Is there funding tied directly to their FTE, the funds brought in by their FTE, or do we fund it beyond the FTE, the district?
The district funds the FTE for pods. Their grant cannot pay for staffing.
Right, but they're funded per person, their funding comes per person, just like it would for, if it came into our general fund. So it's dependent upon their FTE in terms of how much funding they get. When the FTE drops, their funding drops, et cetera.
Yep.
Or when it increases, it increases.
That's
Okay, thank
correct,
you.
Dennis. Yep.
And just a quick follow-on to Chris's question. Under enrollment, I see that we can't have no more than 200 students. What is the minimum threshold? I know you said that there is a minimum. Do we know the number?
We do not have a number written in the contract as of right now. Jen, I'm assuming we'd look at the staffing and FTE allocations.
Okay.
And if we no longer could support effectively bringing teachers over there and running a full grade level and being able to run full FTE, that it would no longer be able to operate.
Okay,
But
thanks.
we did give them a minimum at one time,
We did.
We did.
but that's no longer in play, correct?
When pods first opened, it was, again, but it was way different back then because it was 6th grade to 9th grade. It was looking at students somewhere within the 30 to 50 per classroom range, was what the maximum would be. As we've moved forward from that original configuration to the existing configuration, the pods has operated, their FTE has remained basically same from the beginning. They have absorbed additional students as the board required them to do. It is spread out over now 7th grade through 12th grade. And that's that 200 max. And that's based on both staffing at this point as well as physical space.
Can our current staff handle 200 students?
It's going to be pushing it.
And that's why we have a wait list, right? Because yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And I think you said 30 to 50 per class. You didn't mean, you meant for grade.
Grade.
Grades, okay.
I meant
I just
per
wanted to
grade. No, I'm
clarify
sorry, I
that the
meant per
community
grade.
or the class
No, I
sizes,
meant
okay.
Originally per grade.
Okay.
Yes.
But we don't have 200.
No.
So we're not worried about that.
About
At this
150
They're at about
right now.
150, which was what we, as a board,
Kind of the goal.
asked them to set for their goal.
Right, and I think when Corey references that 200 would be a bit of a stretch, it's just the level of individualized support and instruction that's provided for students at pods would make it difficult at 200.
Well, with CFC going over there also, that's gonna create space concerns if you start putting too many kids.
Correct.
We actually have the space sheet, so we have 2 extra classrooms that are not being used by either CFC or pods right now. So we do have some extra space available for that. I think the biggest concern, and Meg alluded to it, is because they use that project-based learning model and EL to increase their staffing from where they're currently at. 8th grade is capped out right now. But if you were to increase the staffing past that point, it would be very difficult to run that model effectively.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Any other questions?
Just to clarify, this is in lieu of POD's usual report, because don't they come near the end of the year to give a
No, this is.
update on their programs?
So this is just their contract. It's
Yeah.
it's a 5-year contract. So we anticipate they will still be coming forward to the board with a report as they do every
Okay.
year. Yes,
Likely April or May.
yes. Any other questions? So we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed with nay? Motion carries. back to you.
You took my stuff, you know.
I call the votes.
You took. Oh. All right, we have the second one is the, a new aligned, it's aligned and accelerated math track proposal. Jen Bowling and Laura Leahy are here. They talked to us about this, and you're gonna have a little display up here too?
It's there.
Okay.
There, yep, I think
And this
Jeff-
is also for a vote.
Correct. This is an action item. I think Jeff is going to lead in and then pass it off to Jen and Lori respectively.
Yep. So, and I'll move fairly quickly. I know all board members were here at Ed Services last week when we made the initial proposal. But this is, as G alluded to, we are looking at realigning our math track at the junior high levels for the 23-24 academic year. Like I mentioned when we met with Ed Services, for us, it is really important for kind of collectively for the group to understand that we really are doing this to identify what's in the best interest of all of our students. And we really made this, we made this decision to push this proposal forward now because we wanted our data from first semester. We wanted an opportunity for our teachers to be able to work within illustrative math. And, you know, in that reflection and the work on the program, we identified that illustrative math, their scope and sequence does not align with our current programming. Additionally, we found that when we look at how we are structured both within IM and then the fact that all of our students end in the same place with geometry, that the course offerings that we have really weren't meeting the needs that we had for students. In addition, as we dove into IM, we realized that it has a lot of great resources to support our teachers in the classroom, being able to provide for a wide variety of student needs in the room. They have opportunities and resources built in to support students who may need to get pushed a little bit harder in the class, and we didn't have that in our pre-existing curriculum. So within the memo, we identified in meeting with the principals, all junior high teachers, our math coach, and myself, we came to consensus around putting together the proposal to remove Advanced Algebra 1 and Advanced Pre-Algebra for next year. On the memo, we kind of lay on the table because one of the things that I think is really important is to understand that, number one, this only applies to math, and one of the major reasons for that is unlike our other advanced programs at the junior high level, math actually supports true acceleration. So on the memo, you can identify that a student can be accelerated in math 2 years, and take advanced transitional math in 7th grade, or 6th grade, and then algebra in 7th, or they could be accelerated 1 year, taking advanced transitional math in 7th, and then algebra in 8th grade. And we want to keep that and continue to support that moving forward. Chris has up the slides where we really dove into the research. So kind of the first thing we really looked at in our rationale was the research that's out there supporting detracking in math and allowing for true acceleration. So we looked at 3 current peer-reviewed research articles, and when we summarized those, it really identified that if you detrack, that has a positive effect for low ability students and no effect for average or high. And again, this was in the 3 research articles we looked at. But more importantly than that is John Hattie's work. And we talked about this at Ed Services and laughed. We are all data nerds who look at this stuff. And in John Hattie's work, he identified that the effect size for accelerated programming is 0.68. When you look at ability grouping for gifted students, which is tracking, it's only 0.3. So what John Hattie did is look at a wide variety of peer-reviewed educational research, and in that process, that effect size rating he gives is based on the positive impact on student achievement. So the higher that effect size, the greater the impact. 0.4 is what he says is the hinge point. So that hinge point means that if it's above 0.4, there's going to be a documented opportunity for students to grow above and beyond what would be considered normal achievement. So at 0.68, accelerated programming is well above that, where when we looked at tracking or ability grouping for gifted students, that is only at 0.3. The next rationale that we had was removing advanced pre-algebra 8 and advanced algebra 1 will increase our collaboration time for teachers. We have some teachers that have 3 preps in math right now. They don't have an opportunity to come around the table with their other math teachers and really talk about what's best for our students. And we really, at the junior high levels, are working hard to try to build in time for PLCs. And that is what we want to provide for these teachers, where they can come together and they can look at best practices in the classroom. They can do lesson reviews. They can look at student data. And when you look at John Hattie's research, he really wraps that all in the idea of collective teacher efficacy. And the effect size of that is 1.57, which is the highest of all of the factors. So when teachers have confidence in what they're working on and working with, know how to support their students, it has a massive impact on student achievement. So those were 2 really big kind of research-based rationales. I'm going to turn it over to Jenny Bowling now, and her and Laura are going to walk through the next 2 slides.
My name is Jenny Bowling. I'm the math coach this year. I've also been teaching in the district for like 16 years. And so what we're looking at here is we eliminated advanced classes in the year 2021 at SPASH, eliminated advanced math classes, I should clarify that. And so at that time, when those were eliminated, just recently in the last few weeks, I surveyed our staff at SPASH and asked them for feedback on their reaction to 2 years since this implementation. Did we make the right decision? And 90% of our staff said yes, and that would be the 9 out of 10 teachers that are still in our district that were, we had 2 new hires this year. So that was encouraging as we look at this conversation that was coming from the junior high perspective, because we want to make sure that we are thinking about what's best for our students, but also the teacher feedback as well on that. So that's the SPASH perspective on that. Personally, I taught Advanced Algebra 2, I taught Algebra 2, I taught both of them the same year. I taught, a combination of that for a number of years in the district, and I was hesitant as well initially. And so last year was the first year that we only had Algebra 2 and not Advanced Algebra 2, and so it's just really important to note a couple of things. First of all, I felt initially, as I'm sure some of the junior high teachers feel, initially a little bit like, am I going to be able to meet the needs of all of the students in my room? Am I going to be able to accelerate and push the students that need the help while also being able to support the struggling students in the room? And this curriculum we were piloting last year, at the time, really when we started to get into the deep, hard content of Algebra 2, and I absolutely felt like the resource provided that opportunity for our students, along with our skills in UDL, which we've had lots and lots of training on. And so the ability to reach the students in groups, to be able to do things where we can work with students that need extra help, but also encourage this support of our students. Illustrative math has built into every single lesson. It's called Are You Ready for More? That is intended for advanced students. And so in any lesson, if you were to observe a class at SPASH, you would hear Miss Leahy, for example, she would simply be like, hey, this table's already done with this. Please do the Are You Ready for More? And then we'll come back around and cycle to that. Another common thing that our teachers are doing is simply saying things like, you did that perfectly. Can you show us another approach to that problem? Can you come up with another way to solve that problem? Or you have 2 different answers at this table. Can you justify to your neighbor why you're correct? Those kinds of conversations that really develop that deep understanding is kind of the direction that this curriculum allows in the discussion-based instructional model that we have in the illustrative math curriculum.
And then finally, my name is Laura Leahy. I've been teaching, back a page. I've been teaching in the district for 28 years. I've taught accelerated 7th grade. I taught it when it was advanced 7th grade. And now this year I teach algebra. The course sequence for illustrative math is 7th grade, pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2. There's no separate program for advancement. However, there is an accelerated 7th grade and then algebra 1, geometry, and algebra 2. So I am as completely aligned to what we're hoping to be able to do. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is currently, as the advanced 7th grade teacher, when parents ask me what class should I put my student in, I have to have a conversation with them about the fact that they could go into regular algebra or they could go into advanced algebra, and then at the end of the year, they're all going to go into geometry anyway. So it's kind of a strange conversation to have with parents. It's kind of a road to nowhere. And then it's just strange. The other thing that I just personally, I was really worried when I took on the advanced 6th grade virtual model, that this is the second year I've done it. I was afraid about the 7th graders coming in and being with big old 9th graders. Well, I've got them in my class this year, and it's not a big deal at all. The kids are academically on the same level, so their conversations are mathematically fine, and there really isn't a lot of time to go somewhere else that could be, uncomfortable or anything like that. So, yes?
The next slide simply just shows the current course sequence we have, and then it identifies the proposed course sequence. So you can notice that if we look at the right side, 9th grade, Algebra 2 geometry, you can see the acceleration that we have, 2 years, 1 year, whether they accelerate but then struggled, how we handle that with the advanced pre-algebra versus pre-algebra, no acceleration, and if we offer support. The only changes that we are proposing are going from the yellowish color to the blue color. You will notice the end sequence is the same. There was a good question at Ed Services about, like, when you look at accelerated 1 year but struggled, what course follows would be the 10th grade sequence. That would be geometry. Similarly, no acceleration, the 10th grade course would be geometry, which is the normal path for a student, is to be in geometry as a 10th grader. And then, of course, we offer support, the AIM course all the way, Transition 7, all the way through Algebra 2 support courses for students in illustrative math curriculum. So that's our proposed changes. And you'll notice that, and as Laura stated exactly, whether we have Advanced Algebra 1 or Algebra 1, they're all going into geometry. I would like to just also note, because I always love data, right? That's my thing. How did our students transition? I think that's a fair question. So when you think about, like, my students in Algebra 2 last year were mixed with average Algebra 2 and Advanced Algebra 2. They were together. How are they doing in pre-calc right now? Fair question, right? So I, of course, looked up the data. And interestingly, we actually have more students enrolled in pre-calc than we did the year before, and their grades are better than they were the year before. That being said, it's like, okay, that was a concern for a lot of people, so I think that's a really important thing. It's one data point, it's 1 year, but it's also really promising. We have more A's and B's in the course this year, and our enrollment is up in pre-calc. And when you think about why, what's happening is we had Algebra 2 students, and they went into Algebra 3 typically, and we had Advanced Algebra 2 students, and they went into pre-calc typically, right? Now we put them all together, and we have some of those average Algebra 2 students that are like, I can do pre-calc, right? And so we got the enrollment increased in that higher level because they're exposed to that higher level discussion, the higher level conversations, and the higher level content. So we aren't reducing what we're providing for our students, we are enhancing for all of our students.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I just want to say thanks to Jenny and Jeff. I had many questions prior to tonight's presentation. I'm so clear now, I could give this presentation if anyone ever wanted me to step in, but I think it makes sense. I mean, given the new curriculum, it's also important that you guys have that teacher collaboration, right? Because then you can build upon best practices, and thank you for being clear that this is just for the math because it makes sense. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I would be looking, let me pull the paper over. I would be looking for a motion to approve the aligned math track for the 2023 to 2024 academic year as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Chris, second by G. Any discussion or questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor with aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed with nay? Motion carries.
Thank you,
Thank
Jen.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Laura.
Jenny. Thanks, Laura.
We had one last thing, the HGBC, right? The Human Growth and Development committee had to, somebody dropped out, so we had to have a replacement, and we have to vote on that. So I'm going to let Chris explain a little more about that.
Sure, and not much to share beyond what G has already shared. Back in September, we brought the Human Growth and Development Advisory Committee membership to the board for approval, recognizing that we could arrive at a place where we had a member who was not able to fulfill their responsibilities associated with their position on the advisory committee. We had this occur at one other time earlier, and we needed to replace that member. We are very near bringing recommendations to the full board for approval, but recognizing that we haven't finalized those yet. In alignment with State Statute 118.019, we're going to recommend that we add Autumn Carlson. She was a parent who was recommended by one of our members of administration, reached out to Autumn, and she was willing to join us for this final stretch of the curriculum review process, and she was able to actually join us at our meeting last Thursday. Though she was not actively participating, she was just there to learn as much as she could so she could help us finalize those recommendations. So at this point, I'd be happy to entertain any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions? So I'd be looking for a motion to approve the updated list of Human Growth and Development Advisory Committee members as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jen, second by Chris. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor with aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed with nay? Motion carries. Moving into item 13, general. The first item is process of appointment of board member to open seat. So, of course, with Mike Wade resigning, we as a board are need to appoint somebody. Dennis and Corey and I met a couple times, and Chris and took a look at the calendar. Dennis is here tonight, so that he can let board members kind of know where we all are coming from. We looked at a bunch of different angles because we could decide to appoint someone a month from now, or we could decide to appoint someone 2 months from now, or we could decide to appoint somebody 3 months from now. The reason that this has two motions in front of it is because our current policy, 142.5, states that in the event we do not appoint someone within 60 days, the board president has the authority to appoint somebody. That was put in place in response to the Racine School Board that had 8 members, needed to appoint a member, and couldn't, and wouldn't, and didn't. And so that came to us as a recommendation from a legal counsel as well as Neola. So if we are looking to go on the timeline we're recommending, the first thing we have to do is as a board waive that we're not going to comply with that this time around, because I have no interest in appointing someone by myself, and that we're going to go through what our normal process is. So that's, again, why we have the two motions in front of us. When we took a look at it, the reality is we've got an election coming up. And so if we decided to appoint someone a month from now, we very likely would have some of the people who are running for election decide to put their names in for appointment. They'd be appointed for 1 year. They would remain on the ballot. They could then be elected and get a 3-year and then resign, and we'd be right back to square one. We also, in talking, thought it was important that that the new board, the board that's being elected, would have a say in who is going to be appointed to then be a board member going forward. So that was sort of our thinking. The next question was, well, then do we do it in April at our organizational meeting so that that newly appointed person can be part of that whole reorganizational process of the board? Or do we reorganize as 8 and then appoint that person in May? And then we would have to slot that newly appointed person into whatever organization we had created. And so what we've came around to propose to all of you tonight is that we look to, and it will make it a very busy, very interesting organizational night, but that we look to waiting for the election to be over, and then the next day, we open for applications, and we give people 2 weeks to apply, but we let them know now we're doing that. And we let them know a month from now that we're doing that. So everyone in the community knows it's going to be a short window, but you've got a lot of time to think about it. And then we close that on the 19th, so they've got 2 weeks for to get their applications in, and then board members, existing board members, will have the ability to take a look at all of those applications. And then, and newly elected, and then on the night of our organization, we have 2 separate meetings. The first meeting will be the appointment process, where we will interview the candidates, the applicants, as we have done in the past, and then we will make a decision on that night about who we are appointing to the board. And then we will go into our reorganization meeting, and that newly appointed member will be part of the discussion of the 9 of us board members to determine officers, to determine committee chairs, to determine committee appointments, to determine ad hoc committee. And, you know, when we took a look at all of the aspects, we just felt like that made the most sense for having a board all populated, all organized, and all ready to move forward then at that meeting in May. So we're opening it up to the board. And Dennis, do you have anything you want to add?
Sure, just that uncharacteristically, I agree with everything you said. I really do think it's very important for our those who are running to the board to have an opportunity to be considered for appointment, and I think it's very important that those who are eventually hired have input on forming the various committees, et cetera, so we reorganize. So I agree 100%, and it's well stated, and I hope we get support on the board with this.
Jen?
I participated in the last, I interviewed for the last open seat. It was 3.5 hours long. So, I mean, just throwing that out, that my concern is this is going to be a very lengthy, long night, potentially, upwards of 5 hours. Okay.
Yes, and yes,
I believe that the interview ended at 9:30 PM, so.
yes.
I think we had 14 applicants, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah. 15,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a long night.
And so after someone is appointed, then we have the organizational meeting. Is that for all the officers and all the committees?
Yes.
That's an awfully long. Is there any chance we could do the appointment the day before?
Well, that's the Monday, but maybe the
Or,
week before, or I don't know, yeah.
yeah.
Well, part of it is, again, that, if we're looking to that, looking to allow people to have some time to apply, and also looking to allow board members to have some ability to review applications.
What about if we had the officers, but did the committee assignments on a different night? Because that seems to take a lot of discussion. What nights are you
We
available?
have to do that by state
I
statute.
think we do have to do it by state statute. By that, we have to.
The committees?
Organizational.
I think the organizational meeting. And typically, it's the officer stuff that takes more time, because we've been able to, I think over the last few years, we've been able to kind of populate the committees, because some people feel real strong about a committee they want to
Right.
be on, but we always have people who are willing to kind of then take a different committee. I mean, and yes, Jen, and that's you're exactly right. Organizational meeting tends to be a little bit longer meeting, but that's the only item we have on the agenda for organizational is organization of the board. Clearly, the length of time for the appointment process will have something to do with how many people we have applied, because I think it was, what did we have, like?
14, I believe,
14
I think.
And we can start earlier. We
I was
could
just gonna-
start at
that's-
5 or
that was my next
5:30.
5:30 gives people time
Yeah.
off work to.
That's what I was gonna suggest, and I
Yep.
think we should start earlier.
Thank
Right.
you.
Yeah.
And that way people won't be,
Yep.
staying there late, but I'd like to do it one night.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
I would
can, I mean, we
recommend
could, we could.
It ended at
we could
9:30. That's-
Potentially, we can poll the board about what would be the earliest that people were comfortable with us starting with at 5:30, and then look to start the board at, you know.
That sounds good.
Does anybody have any, I guess, other questions or comments or concerns? This is the only time I can remember that we've had a resignation and then an election about right there, and it just complicates things in a unique way.
Okay, I'm comfortable. Yeah.
An early
We start
start.
earlier, yes.
Yeah.
So if there aren't any questions, then we are looking for two motions. And the first motion will be to move to suspend policy 0142.5, requirement to fill a vacancy within 60 days.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Chris and second by Judy. Any discussion or questions on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor with aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed with nay? Motion carries. Okay, we will move in then to the second motion would be moved to approve the proposed timeline and process to appoint a new school board member.
So moved.
Second.
So motion by Jen and second by Judy. Any discussion or questions on that motion?
Could you just quickly summarize what
Yes.
is it going to happen? What
So
day
the
and all
dates
that?
would be, applications would be made available to the public on April 5th, 2023.
Oh, it's written in here?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
but gee, I think it's good to read it. And, you know, we're going on radio tomorrow. Sarah's going to put it on the website. We're going to get information out to media just to let them know. And we'll talk about it at our meeting next month too, because of that short turnaround. So applications would be available on April 5th, 2020, or they'll be made available April 5th, 2023. The deadline for applications to be submitted to Bliss would be April 19th, 2023. There would be a special board meeting on April 24th, 2023 to conduct interviews and select a candidate. And then on April 24th, 2023, the selected candidate will take their oath and be seated at the special school board reorganization meeting. Okay. Do I need to call? I need to call that, yes.
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed with nay? Motion carries. Thank you. It's complicated. I really appreciate you helping us walk through it. We're moving into item B, which is appointment of an interim board treasurer, because of course we need someone for a couple months. And I guess we're looking for a motion. The reality is that, you know, we've already populated our committees. It makes sense that we maybe stick with existing members on the Business Services Committee.
So that leaves Jen and Dennis.
No.
And Jeff.
Right?
I'm on Ed Services.
No,
Oh,
it's
that's
Jeff,
Jeff?
Dennis, Judy.
Oh, Judy, I forgot.
Is it open to nomination?
Yes.
I'd like to nominate Jeff Ebel.
For treasurer?
For treasurer.
Correct. For treasurer.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Jen. Do we have any other nominations?
You're it, buddy.
Do we have any other nominations? Hearing none, we have a nomination for Jeff Ebel to serve as the interim board treasurer. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed with nay? Motion carries. Moving into item C, appointment of interim chair of Business Services Human Resources Committee for the next 2 months. Same process. Do I have a motion or a nomination?
Well, I guess I'd like to hear from, can Dennis and Judy share interest, or?
Yeah, I'd be fine. I've done,
No, we did the interim board treasurer. So there's,
Yeah, I would nominate Jeff Evil again.
so,
Yeah, that probably isn't a good idea. The committees go beyond the election. They stay the same, so then you would have 2 interim.
no, they
Chairman
don't
of
stay
the-
the same.
No,
I thought we kept
Nope.
we changed it in June? No,
The
we
board
never-
members change. The
Board
board
members.
members
In the
change.
past, haven't we had the?
it all
Yes.
changes.
At the reorg meeting.
Every-
The chair, right,
Mhm.
right. So board members change on the committee as of May. Members of the public, their term begins in July.
Okay.
So I have a nomination for Jeff Ebel.
I'd like to second that nomination.
We have a second to that nomination. Are there any other nominations?
Just do it. You're
To make you work for your retirement.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, we have a nomination to appoint Jeff Ebel as the interim chair of Business Services Human Resources Committee. All those in favor with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed with nay? Motion carries. Yeah, you're gonna have to work your last 2 months.
Jeff, that usually happens when you don't show up for me.
Yeah, well, what are you gonna do?
Right. All right, so we're moving into just a future meeting dates and times. We've got our regular school board meeting on March 13th, 2023, and a regular school board meeting on April 10th, 2023. So we are now looking to enter into closed session, and we are looking to enter into closed session under 1985 paren 1 paren C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically review of administrative contracts, including cabinet member, principal, school psychologist, and administrative support positions. And also under 1985 paren 1 paren G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, specifically the open meeting violation complaint. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Chris, second by Dennis. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, I will have Carlin call the roll.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Robbie,
Yes.
Ms. Reno,
Yes.
Mr. Ebel,
Yes.
Ms. Bushman,
Yes.
Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Ms. Erler.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, so we will have about 10 minutes to get the room set up, and then